Welcome to the Educate to Advocate podcast.
I'm April Tate, founder of Drops of Hope Consulting. I connect with families with special needs children, work with schools, helping them get services that they qualify for. And that's kind of what I do.
All right. I'm Dr. Penny Stack, and I'm the owner and founder of Dyslexia Center of Tulsa. We work with individuals who have learning differences related to dyslexia by providing team-based services. I am super excited about today's guest and today's topic. So I'm April. I'm going to let you introduce our guest.
All right, perfect. Well, I want to give a huge welcome to Emma Schlais. Thank you so much for being here today. We are so excited about this talk. This is the talk that you're going to find out really quick is not something that Penny and I have any knowledge of
not a clue
whatsoever.
We are not the experts.
So we are happy to have Emma here. She is the Broken Arrow, which is a big school district here in Oklahoma, the Broken Arrow PTA Council Special Education Chair. She has put together a parent SPED chat group. She has put together some Facebook resources and works with all kinds of families with special needs children. And we have her here today to talk about TEFRA. Now, I've heard this term loosely in the special education world. I've never learned much about it. So I'm very excited to learn today. So TEFRA stands for the Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act of 1982. And specifically, it's referring to the Section 134 that talks about how Medicaid gives the states the option to make Medicare benefits available for children with physical or mental disabilities who would ordinarily not qualify for like Social Security benefits. Is that correct, Emma?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, excellent. And so I know that you've gone through this process before. And we talked before starting our podcast that this is something that is an option by state. And so as you're listening to this, we wanted to give this information out because we feel like it would be very helpful to a lot of different families, but it's by state. So the very first thing that we want to cover is before you even think about it, just go ahead and do a search. And I think, Emma, you have a website. What is that website that we can look and see if your state is participates in this or not?
I just did random Google searches for TEFRA and then just some random states, and it takes you to to that state's basic government page, and then I think it links it through there because it's through states DHS, their Department of Healthcare.
Okay, excellent. So basically, this is the whole idea behind TEFRA is that it is a supplemental, almost like a secondary insurance to help cover expenses for children with different needs
that Medicaid would not necessarily cover.
Exactly.
Right.
So who would want to look into this, Emma, from your experience?
Anybody with a child with special needs or a disability that is paying for anything. If you're paying for therapies, if you're paying for equipment, if you're paying for prescriptions, if you're paying for anything specifically for your child's disability or special need, look into it.
Okay, excellent. So what kind of benefits does it provide? If say I get this and I've got, I have OT, occupational therapy expenses, I have different prescriptions, would all of that would be covered? What is your experience with that?
My experience in the bottom line is anything that is prescribed by my son's doctor is covered. So normally, even if anybody who's getting any services through occupational therapy or speech therapy, to start that process, you usually have to have a prescription, quote unquote, from your child's pediatrician, from your child's doctor. So it's coming from them anyways. So, and it acts as a secondary insurance. We do have a primary insurance. And anything that isn't picked up by that is by our primary is picked up by the secondary, the Medicaid. And here in Oklahoma, it's Sooner Care. And it all kind of goes under that umbrella. So my son's therapy, his occupational therapy, when we were doing speech therapy, he recently just got a new, it's a stroller, but for a bigger kid, because he has endurance issues. We go on a lot of walks, and he can't walk for a long period of time without wearing down. He has some low muscle tone issues, and our insurance paid for it, and it was a $2,000 piece of equipment that was covered. The only thing they didn't cover was the sun canopy, because that wasn't required medically necessary or deemed medically necessary by the insurance. And so we just paid out of pocket for that. And it was a very low cost item.
Emma, I'm curious. You had mentioned Sooner Care. And for those of you that are not familiar, Sooner Care is Oklahoma's version of Medicaid. Right. And so, different states may have different names for it. So we're going to use those words interchangeably for the sake of the podcast. But I didn't know from your experience, I know that you kind of have networked with a lot of other parents in your school district that have children with special needs. To your knowledge, do you know of other parents that are able to tap into TEFRA that may have private insurance aside from Medicaid or Sooner Care?
And I apologize, I might not have understood your question. Basically, anybody that I believe our state requirements are anyone that has a child under the age of 19 that's living in your home, that is, I believe on our state website it said identified with a disability from Social Security can apply.
Is it income based?
It is income based on the child's income, not the parents, not the family.
That's great.
They do, it's on the child's income. So not many children have income under the age of 19.
Right. That's great.
So if I were wanting to get started to doing this, can you kind of walk us through the process a bit?
I will say, and I know we talked about it, it's the initial signing up procedure is very, very tedious. It was when we did it, and we've had it for a very long time. So it's possible that the initial process has changed, but when we did it, they require a lot of information from you, all of your income, all of your assets. You need to have a letter from your medical necessity from your doctor. When we had to do it, we had to have a letter of denial from Social Security disability. And it was multiple pages, a lot of information. You had to have pay reports from your work, and just gathering all of this information, putting it together. And I stopped and started many, many times. And probably over the course of years, I would pick it up and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to power through. And then I would put it down because it was just like, it was too much, gathering too much. And finally, I said, okay, I'm sticking with it. I'm doing it. And I'm so glad I did, because like I said, it's paying for everything. He has a prescription that I think I have to pay maybe $30 for, but it's because we get the 90-day supply. And his insurance only covers the 30-day supply. So otherwise that would be covered as well. And we do have to renew every year, but the renewal is very simple. It's a couple of pages of documentation. You still have to do the same. You have to have the letter of medical necessity from his doctor. You still have to have, pay reports from your employer if you're working, and you have to list your assets. But it's basically the same process repeated every year. And once you've done it a few times, you're pretty used to it.
So really, it's just you just have to power through. And as long as you have the stamina, which, for a special needs parent who has a lot of things on their plate that they're already juggling, they're already, doing the gamut of therapy runs and all of the things that you have to deal with as a parent, adding that on can be overwhelming. But it sounds like it is definitely worth all of the extra. Do you know the time?
I will add real quick. We do also had to have a copy of his IEP. So it's a lot. And if you've seen an IEP, it's not a couple pages. It's
sure.
Emma,
it's a novel.
I'm really glad that you pointed out that this was kind of an arduous process and it took you many, many times to finish it because just like April was saying, a parent with a child with special needs is exhausted. You're already feeling like, you may have some brain fog. You already may be feeling like
Overwhelmed.
Everything's so difficult, but giving some grace here, letting them know this may be daunting can help a parent with expectations as they approach this and maybe say, I'm going to plan out so many hours a week. And if I can do it during nap time, I need to be awake and clear to do it. And then it's okay to put it aside. And they could just plan a lot better. So I really appreciate you sharing that because I know there have been times I've had to fill out paperwork and I've either melted down and cried
Sure.
or something as simple as an expense report. Right? That shouldn't be hard. I'm terrified of them. I couldn't imagine having to fill out this long process. So thank you so much for sharing that very real thing.
Absolutely. So talk to me a little bit about the timeline. So clearly it's an arduous process. You have all your paperwork together. You go to submit it. What does that look like? What should a parent expect on the back end of that?
Everything you have a caseworker that's kind of assigned to you when you send it all in. And I will say my personal experience, it's been the same person for several years. And I'm very, very glad because she's very, very helpful and always quick to respond. If I have questions or if I leave something out, she's like, no big deal. And it's nice to have that support. And as somebody, I don't want to say it's someone on the inside, but it's their job and I'm glad that they're there, but they've always been very helpful to me. And I always just gather all the information. I scan it, email it in. And my personal experiences, the responses have been very quick within, a day or two. And again, the people that I've been very fortunate to work with on it have always been very helpful, very quick to respond. And I feel like they kind of, hopefully everyone that takes this path, I guess, if they do, finds that same sense of helpfulness, whoever they encounter, because it really is nice. And Penny, you were saying it's okay to set it aside and take a break. And you kind of have to, because you're having to gather so much information. And especially if you have a spouse or a partner and you're having to get, pay reports from them and you're having to wait a couple days, or you having to wait a couple days to get a letter back from the doctor, or just put it all in one place and then just kind of keep it in order. Maybe make a checklist of what you're still waiting on, what you have. And that's my process, is making lists and being able to check things off as they're done, or I can see what I'm still waiting on so I don't forget anything. And just put it all aside. And then as you get it, and then once you get all of it, just send it away and take a breath.
I bet that feels good to put that in the mail and just be done with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And keep copies of everything. Everything you send. Fortunately, ours is I scan it and I send it through email and I keep a file, but definitely keep copies of everything in case someone says, oh, we didn't get this. You can say, okay, here it is. I have it. I'll send it over.
Great tip.
So Emma, I'm going to go a little off topic here. If you've listened to our podcast in the past, you know that that's pretty normal for us to go off topic on a whim. But I want to go back to your activity with the Broken Arrow School District and heading the Broken Arrow SPED chat, the special education chat. So this is something I know April's familiar with and has had an opportunity to visit with your group. And I recently had an opportunity to visit with your group, which was just phenomenal. And the experience I had was, you had reached out to me. This was a group where your parents are coming together just to learn about support in their community and what is out there and how can they advocate for their child or get their child's needs met. But the one thing that kind of stuck out to me was I don't see groups like this as a common resource in school districts. And because our podcast is viewed literally all over the world, which is, I still like feel like I
Still
have to pinch
crazy.
myself, right? It's like, really, that's true. I would love to take advantage of our platform here. And I know I'm going to put you on the spot, so only speak what you're comfortable to speaking. But if you could dive a little bit into the functionality of the group, how it gets put together. So in other words, if there is a parent in a whole nother state or school district that didn't have this type of group set up, what would it look like for them? How could they do it? So they can become their own resource for sure.
Well, my son, I have two sons, and my younger one has special needs and he's 13 years old. Um, and we were very fortunate at a very, very young age with him. We were set on a path by an amazing occupational therapist that was just randomly assigned to us through Sooner Start here in Oklahoma. And I wish I could say that I was smart enough to do it all on my own, but nobody really is.
No one knows what they don't know.
No,
We all dive into those relationships.
Yeah, you either have someone put in your path that sets you on the right course, which we were very fortunate that she did, and this whole community just kind of opened up in front of me that I didn't even know existed before all of this, with therapies and support groups, and I was just like, you had no idea. And my older son is gifted, and for a very long time there was a gifted parent chat in Broken Arrow, and they would have speakers come in and they would talk about resources for your child, summer camps, or things you could be doing in school. And I was like, why isn't there one for special education, or why isn't there one for special needs kids? And I started asking questions, and I was pretty involved in my son's schools anyways with PTA. And that is one, regardless of your child, if they're, how old they are, they're neurodiverse or neurotypical. I don't like those words, but those are the words we use. Get involved in their schools, get involved in their classrooms, because that's where this all started. I started asking questions and started getting involved. And I was very fortunate that the Broken Arrow Council president kind of was like, well, would you want to get something started? And I'm like, sure. I mean, if nobody else is, then why not? And it took several years of asking questions, and I would end up on an advisory council that kind of would fizzle out, and it just kind of worked its way. It was a very slow working my way up. I don't want to call it a ladder, but it was a process. And this is really the, I guess, second school year that we've been doing it. The very first one, it actually just came up in my Facebook memories, was February of last year that April was at.
That was
Oh,
mine.
you did your first one. That's awesome.
I did.
Yeah, that was our very first one. And so many people I didn't even know, because I made a flyer, I shared it everywhere that I could, and friends were sharing it. And I had people I didn't know, or even people, and again, this was last February, so we were in person. I had people coming up to me that I didn't know that were saying, we've been waiting for so long for some kind of
Wow.
resource or something like this. And we're so glad that we finally have it. And unfortunately, with the world the way it is right now, we're having to do a lot of things virtually. And it's difficult everybody's doing everything online. And sometimes by the time you get to an evening when we're doing this, everyone's just like, you know what, I'm done. I can't do one more thing on the computer. But we're still putting them together. We're still planning them. And so far we've had great outcome with our speakers and feedback with the people who've been able to attend. But I mean, like, to answer your question, sorry, long story short.
No, you're doing great.
Get involved, ask questions. If there's something that you want to see that you're not seeing, start asking questions. Ask questions at your school. If your kid is in therapy somewhere, occupational therapy, speech therapy, ask questions like, what are the resources out there? Where's the community? and also get involved in your kid's school. It's good for you just to know who your child's with all day.
Oh, I
And
agree.
also, especially if you're involved in their classroom, it works well for you. You get to know the people your child's with, the environment, the teachers, the paras, but the teachers and paras also greatly appreciate that support, and to know that they're supported. And that's one of the biggest things you can do, is show that support to them.
I agree. How many times, Penny, do I say it all comes back to the relationship?
It does. I thought that was playing over my head. Like, we've talked about the relationship
We
over and
have.
over.
We have. That's wonderful. Well, Emma, I want to just say from us, we see you and we thank you for your advocacy,
So
because
much.
we know how it feels like such an uphill battle, but once you start moving in those circles and once you start seeing a need and trying to fill it, it's just incredible. It gives me goosebumps to think about, because you are touching a lot of people through the BA SPED chat, but also through, I know that you help people through this TEFRA paperwork. I know that you're active in your occupational therapy clinic. I know you're active at school, and everybody seeing you do this work, A, people are benefiting from it, but B, it's making it visible. And we want this inclusivity, but if people aren't seeing us do the work and we're doing things behind the scenes and they're not seeing it, then it's harder. Whenever people see you doing things, they're like, "Oh, this is what she's doing, and this is making a big difference." And people are okay to say, "Well, what can I do to help, or how can I help make an impact in this particular area?" So, thank you.
Yeah. And the other thing, go ahead, Emma.
No, I was going to add on the Facebook group that you mentioned. It was started with this sense of community, and it's very open, and I'm very open to other people sharing. And one of my main goals for it is sharing resources, and it's not just the Broken Arrow community. It can be shared with I share things from all over. A lot of it is stuff that I found from the Oklahoma Special Education Board, but it's global. It can be used in any way. But a lot of it is also giving parents and caregivers a place to come in and say, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. What are other people doing? Like, how do you deal with this? And part of it, and what I would love is it always goes back to this community, and being able to confidently and openly say, hey, I need a good place to take my kid to the dentist or to get his haircut. And people to be able to say, well, this place worked really well for me, or this place was, other people like it, but we didn't have a great experience. Or just that sense of people being able to openly ask questions or share resources, or say, look, we had a major meltdown over this, and someone say, we did too, and I did this and it worked amazing, and someone go, thanks, because it doesn't matter how old your kids are or how long you've been doing it. There are still times where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no clue what I'm doing. I need help.
Sure. And I think that there's just a sense of sometimes loneliness in this process, and people like you creating those environments where there's community is really important. And I want to give the name of that Facebook group out to our listeners. It is the BAP as in Paul, T as in Tate. That's me. A.
As in April.
So BAPTA, Special Education Parent and Caregiver Group. And it's a private group, but you just answer some questions, some pretty basic questions, and you'll be accepted. And so I know Emma would really love to have you join her community.
Emma, I do public speaking, and one of the questions I get asked the most is, wow, we think what you're having to say is interesting, but how do we make that change at our school? How do we actually do this at our school? And I love the fact that you talked again about this was a long process. You vetted it through several groups. Some fizzled out, some did not. And I let people know that, right? That it's okay if it doesn't happen tomorrow. It probably won't happen tomorrow, but continue to be that voice, continue doing what you're doing, continue having the conversations. Because a lot of times it's about, well, not a lot, but I think all the time it comes down to relationships again. And that one person that you connect to, you never know where it will go. So keep being that advocate. And I love that you provided a safe place for just support and validation that, it is tough out there taking care of a special needs child, whether they are gifted or whether, whatever their special need is, and to know that the feelings that you have are normal. You're not losing your mind. It's okay.
And there are
I
other
love that
people
you're doing
going
that.
through the same thing.
Yes, because I can imagine it is very isolating.
It can be, for
Mhm.
sure. Yeah.
I'd like to
Emma?
add to that, Penny, if you don't mind talking about relationships. It's also, like I said, getting involved and making it. You don't have to actively make it known that you're out there, but I was so involved in my sons, both of their schools, that people started to know who I was for a good reason. But they started, when there was a district a special education advisory group that I was recommended to. It wasn't something I found on my own. It's been years ago, and I can't remember how I made my way onto it. I'm very glad that it was one of those that it didn't quite work out, but it was something I was recommended to. So that's another facet to those relationships, is the relationships that other people have with you. They know who you are, and if they know if they're looking for help, that they know it's like, oh, hey, I know this one lady. She may not be able to answer all your questions, but she can find out how, or she knows people. And that's me. I definitely don't have all the answers, but I know a whole lot of people who, one way or another, I'm going to work my way through and find the answer for you. And also on the other side of that is, if you start asking those questions and putting yourself out there and getting involved, be prepared for someone to say, so, hey, do you want to?
Yes. Yes.
Be ready, because they're going to look at you to say, all right, well, then how do you feel about doing this? And be prepared, and you don't have to be that person. You can be a supporting part in that, but be prepared, because they might not have anyone else that's showing interest. So that spotlight might get turned on to you, whether you want it or not.
And
true.
if you're not sure, and you're hesitant, just grab your closest friend and drag them into the planning with you. But you're bound to know other people who can help you. And the nice thing about that is they have other strengths to offset, the areas that, you may need support with. So having a small team or somebody to do it with, just to even bounce ideas off of, can be super helpful, especially when you want to go to the next step and you're holding each other kind of accountable to continue moving the process forward. Don't be afraid to say yes. And then as soon as you get home, call your buddy and say, hey, you need to do this
We
with
need
me because
help.
you're my best friend and you don't have a choice.
You don't have a choice. That's Penny.
Yeah, that's me.
You don't have a choice.
Like, you're doing it. She's like, no. I'm like, yeah, you are.
It always happens. Well, Emma, thank you so, so much for all of the information that you shared with us today. I'm really excited because I think this is going to really be helpful for our listeners. I just thank you. I mean, you're just so positive, and I love what you have to say about community and, all of the TEFRA information, wonderful information, any type of resources we can get for our listeners. Excellent information. And I just love your spirit of just take it and do it.
Mhm.
And, really your advocacy and your work is making a big difference, not just here in Oklahoma, but, nationally, globally, whatever. And I'm just so thankful that we have people like you who are willing to take a deep breath and say, well, I'm not entirely comfortable doing this, but I guess we're going to do it because it needs to be done. So thank you for that.
Yes. Thank you for taking a jump into the deep end and being willing, to do uncharted territory, I guess. The one thing that really stuck out to me was just being realistic about the time things will take
Mhm.
and knowing it's a long process. And I always tell people it may not happen in our lifetime for our children, but we may be laying the groundwork for our grandchildren. Right. And that's what, sometimes that's all that it is.
Yeah. Or you're laying the groundwork for someone who's just now getting a brand new diagnosis on
Yeah.
an older kid or a younger kid that's stepping into this community for the very first time and going, oh, I
What
had
is
no
going
idea.
on?
Well, thank you very much, Emma, for being with us today. We've certainly have enjoyed visiting with you, and I always learn something. I've really just met you just a few months ago, but I enjoy visiting with you and learning from you very much. So thank you.
Same. Thank you guys very much. Thanks for asking me to be here. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Oh, gosh. We might be talking together too
Oh my
much.
gosh. Oh my gosh. We're like sisters or something. Okay. So
We hope that you leave today feeling empowered to advocate. Thank you so much for making us a small part of your day.
we'd love to hear from you and what's on your mind. You can email us questions or comments at educatetoadvocate@gmail.com. Listen for your topic on a future podcast.
And you can listen to our podcast on any podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and also check out our new YouTube video. Oh my goodness.
I'm a little excited.
Our new YouTube channel where you can see our video casts. We hope to see you there.